As we were afraid, the rain is catching up with us, but we wanted to talk about fertilizing your trees and shrubs before we left you today. Now, the first question you'll want to ask yourself is, do you need to fertilize your trees? Generally, if your trees are growing relatively vigorously and look healthy, probably you won't need to add any extra fertilizer. Extra fertilizer will give you better growth, and especially in younger trees will make them fill in their space and give you a larger tree quicker. And if you have your tree growing in a lawn that you are fertilizing heavily, chances are real good you won't need to add any extra fertilizer. Now, if your trees aren't growing vigorously, don't automatically blame it on fertilizer or lack of fertilizer. You may need fertilizing, but several other things can cause low vigor, such as soil compaction, salt injury, or waterlogging from poorly drained soils, or trying to grow a species that isn't adapted to your area. So fertilizer shouldn't be viewed as a cure-all. It doesn't always cure low vigor in trees. Low vigor can be caused by several other factors. Now, generally for Oklahoma, potassium and phosphorus are sufficient in all of your soils. Generally, you will not need to add them, but to be sure, it's good to get a soil test run just to make certain that if you do need to put it on. Mostly, you'll just be dealing with nitrogen applications. On a few trees, such as pin oak on high pH soils, you can run into iron deficiency. The best way to solve that is by trying to lower the pH rather than add iron. You can add iron chelate to the soil, which will help the tree. Your best solution, though, is to try and lower the pH to solve your iron deficiency problems. On blueberries and azaleas, again, you can sometimes get into iron and other micronutrient deficiencies, but these are usually caused by the pH being too high. Your best bet, instead of trying to add fertilizer, is to correct the pH, and that should take care of your fertilizer micronutrient problems. Now, nitrogen applications, if you do need to add phosphorus and potassium also, use a complete fertilizer. That will add nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium all at the same time. If phosphorus and potassium are adequate, use just a strictly nitrogen source such as ammonium nitrate, urea, or ammonium sulfate. Now, to figure out how much you need to put on the tree, the easiest method, or the most generally adaptable method, is to figure out the square footage of ground area that your tree is using. Now, what you want to do is apply fertilizer to the entire root zone. And generally, the root zone on a tree will extend for several feet past the drip line. So what you want to do is figure out the square footage of that area several feet outside the drip line, and then figure out, based on that area, how much to put on. You'll want between 1/2 to 2 pounds of actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet of area covered by the tree. Now, generally, the 2-pound rate is what you will need to get a good kick, a good growth spurt out of your tree. It's best if you can split it, half of it in the fall, half of it in the spring. But if you only fertilize once, the best time to do it is sometime in fall. Now, when in the fall? The best time for the trees to absorb the nitrogen is in October while there's still leaves on the tree, because that helps, because there's water being moved up through the tree and out through the leaves. That helps draw in the nitrogen. However, the Bermuda grass is generally still growing at that time and will compete with the trees for the nitrogen absorption. So you may want to wait until November, until after the Bermuda grass has died down, before putting it on. You may lose a little efficiency because the leaves aren't on the tree, but you'll reduce competition because the Bermuda grass is not there. Most of the feeder roots that absorb the nutrients are within the top 8 to 12 inches of soil. Nitrogen is very soluble and easily moves down to that root zone. Phosphorus and potassium move very slowly, but they will get down into that root zone within a few years. So it really isn't necessary to dig lots of little holes and put the fertilizer in. The fertilizer will eventually get there. Root zone applicators, again, not only aren't necessary, but if you put the fertilizer too far down, you're getting them below the roots that need to be absorbing.